Joined now by United States Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri. Good morning, Senator. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing great.
You launched a firestorm. I want to give a little background for our audience on Friday when you tweeted, quote, how much money does ESPN, Disney, ABC Network make from the NBA in China? Just asking. In response, the Page Six gossip columnist of the NBA, a guy named Adrian Wojnarowski. If people don't know it, he goes by Woj, and his hashtag or his Twitter handle is at Woj ESPN, sent you an email that was F you. He later apologized after the blowback. Now he's been suspended. So I want to kind of walk through the issues on this. Let's begin with the cancel culture of suspending Woj. You tweeted yesterday, ESPN, don't suspend a reporter, ask tough questions of the NBA about their pro-China, anti-American bias. Start reporting, for goodness sake. Are you willing to go one step further, Senator, and call for ESPN to immediately reinstate Woj?
Sure. I mean, that's ESPN. Here's the deal. ESPN is trying to distract from the fact that they will not stand up to the NBA and ask the tough questions. The NBA is worth over $1 billion in China, NBA China is. That's why, Hugh, last fall, when Hong Kong was in the throes of protest because of the authoritarian crackdown, the NBA would say nothing. And you might remember that the Houston Rockets general manager, Daryl Morey, when he retweeted, he didn't even say it himself, he just retweeted one little line that said, stand with Hong Kong or free Hong Kong, and oh my goodness, the sky was falling. He got censored. The league came down hard on him. And so I just asked in my letter that I sent on Friday that you referenced, I said, listen, if the NBA is going to put these social justice statements on the back of uniforms, which is what they're doing now, why is it that there's nothing on there about like free Hong Kong or the Uyghurs or anything that has to do with the billions of dollars the NBA makes in China? And you see the response from the reporter, and now ESPN is saying, oh, you know, well, the reporter, we'll take care of that, we'll silence him, but they don't want to address the core issue, which is the NBA's relationship with China. ESPN has a slice of that pie. That's what we ought to be talking about here.
And the Woj story is a diversion. I want to get to the real story, but just to be clear, you think he should be reinstated as well as I do.
I said at the time, I said on Friday, you know, that all the lobbyists start calling me, and then they said, then ESPN puts out an apology, and they made Woj apologize. I said, I don't want an apology. In fact, some other reporter asked me before ESPN apologized at all. They said, do you want an apology? And I said, no, I don't want an apology. So, and I certainly don't want the guy suspended. This doesn't have to do with that. My point is, they won't even ask the questions, and if you ask the question, then the response is F you. I mean, so they don't even want the question asked, let alone do they want to ask it themselves. That's the problem here.
The problem is also bigger than ESPN. Lots of stories were written about Woj cursing you out, but ESPN even put out a statement saying what he did was completely unacceptable. We get all that. What do you think it says about the media that they'll condone, defend, cover a reporter who swears, but not a brutal regime that has the Uyghurs living in internment camps?
Well, it tells you, I think, just where we are with way too many of our multinational corporations. So let's just take the NBA. I mean, the NBA has a deal with the Chinese social media platform Tencent that it alone, Hugh, just the Tencent platform deal is worth $1.5 billion. That's with a B with the NBA. They signed it last November. The NBA now has more social media followers in China than they do in the United States. So I get it. It's a big market. I understand that. But that doesn't mean that Beijing ought to be able to call the tune for the NBA and all of its players and coaches, and for that matter, for Americans. And that's what's happening. Beijing is saying, listen, if you want access to our market, then you're going to say what we want you to say. And that means no criticism of us at all. Zero. We want to crack down on the Uyghurs. We want to put people in concentration camps. We want to steamroll Hong Kong. You will remain silent. You will go along with us. I frankly think that's anti-American. The NBA needs to stand up and say, we are not going to be silenced, and you're not going to be able to buy us off.
Do you believe the NBA needs to disclose publicly its detail on the financial dealings with China? I mean, it's been reported they could lose $400 million. You just said $1.5 billion. I'd like to see an accounting of everything detailed. Do you think they should put that out?
Absolutely. What we know now is pieced together from public reports, and I salute the news organizations, not ESPN, who have been doing this public reporting. But we know that the NBA does over $10 billion in revenue. We know at least 10 to 20% of that is done in China every year. And like we say, we know that some of their deals with China social media platforms are worth alone over $1 billion. But let's see it all. And, we should also see what particular teams, the slices that they are getting. Players have said, some of them won't put their names to it, so they've said on background reporters that they make more in endorsement deals in China than they make from their U.S. salary. So this is big-time money for the NBA, and I think we do deserve to know exactly what they're making, and we deserve to have them explain to us why they won't stand up to this authoritarian regime. By the way, we're just talking about basic American principles. This shouldn't be controversial. This is the stuff that we all agree on as Americans. Free speech, freedom of worship. I mean, it's not a hard question to answer. Do you think that the Chinese government ought to be putting people in concentration camps? That shouldn't be a tough question.
Should the Judiciary Committee subpoena Adam Silver, the NBA commissioner, to come in and talk to you?
Well, that's a great idea. So my letter on Friday that drew the rebuke from the ESPN reporter was addressed to Adam Silver, and it asked for these answers. And it said, listen, again, you're going to put these social justice cause statements now on the back of their jerseys, and only a handful of them, Hugh, that the NBA corporate has approved. It's not like the players can put whatever they want on the back of the jersey. NBA corporate has approved a handful, and predictably they have nothing to say about anything related to China. For that, they don't say things like support our troops or God bless America. All of that stuff is verboten. Can't say any of that. So I just asked, why aren't there other slogans on the jerseys, and why don't you tell us about your relationship with China? So I think that getting these answers is absolutely crucial, and I'm open to just about any avenue to get them. But I'll come back to where we started, which is it would be nice for some so-called news organizations to actually ask these questions, because these are very legitimate questions when you've got an outfit that is doing billions of dollars in China in revenues every year. Now,
ESPN is owned by Disney. A report in January quotes a financial analyst estimating Disney's theme park revenue in Shanghai is $1 billion annually. The 2019 China box office, including Avengers, $614 million, Captain Marvel, $154 million, Frozen 2, $122 million, Lion King, $120 million, Aladdin, $53 million. That's $1 billion in box office. So between the theme parks and the movies, Disney is making so much money in China. They own ESPN. Is that the issue here?
Well, the money is absolutely the issue. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And you're quite right to point out that Disney is the parent company of ESPN. So you think about what those platforms across those platforms are worth. So the ESPN alone, just to come back to the NBA in China, the ESPN benefits big time from the NBA's global stage, global platform, and global contracts. So there is a lot of money at stake here for these corporate platforms, and I think there's no doubt that that's driving a lot of this.
I want to be crystal clear. I am all in favor of athletes speaking their mind. I'm agreeing with them that Woj shouldn't have been suspended. You are as well. I'm not saying subpoena LeBron or any of these other people that are coming out for him, although you might want to welcome them in to talk about China. I don't know if they'll come. But this isn't about changing anyone's speech. It's asking for more speech, Senator Hawley.
Absolutely. And it's asking for some answers as to what exactly the relationship is and why it is that Beijing seems to be able to snap their fingers and to get American companies and American individuals to be silent on critical issues. I mean, as you say, athletes speak their mind all the time on a variety of topics. They certainly have been speaking their mind in recent weeks. That's fine. But it's strange that when Beijing says, not a word about the Uyghurs in concentration camps, not a word about Hong Kong, not a word critical of us, all of a sudden, oh, my goodness, that is the NBA's official line that they mustn't. I mean, just to go back again to Daryl Morey and the Rockets last fall, when he retweeted that one little tweet, Adam Silver, NBA commissioner, said this could cost the NBA hundreds of millions of dollars. One tweet. That's the kind of power Beijing seems to have. That's worrisome.
Now, Senator Hawley, in May, Chinese state media, the Global Times, wrote a column about you in which you were a target, saying Republicans who have been groundlessly accusing China and inflaming the holding China accountable political farce will face severe consequences, sources said, noting that the aftermath will also impact the upcoming November elections, while business and trade between Missouri and China will be soured. They wrote that they would impact the election. That sounds like an overt warning about their intent to meddle in our 2020 election. Did any Democrats approach you with concern about a foreign power meddling in our 2020 election, or they seem not to care?
Zero. No, I haven't heard a word about it. Certainly not to me personally, and I haven't heard a word about it publicly. And you're right, Hugh. It was an absolute threat to meddle in the election, and it was a blatant attempt by saying that they would sanction me personally to try and shut me up, which, by the way, I think is hilarious. I mean, good luck with that. That doesn't threaten me. That emboldens me. But we should take seriously the fact that this is their intent, that this is their desire, and that they're not beating around the bush. I mean, they're saying this is what we want to do. So we should just be clear as Americans, this is what Beijing hopes. It's not just that if you go within their boundaries and their territory, oh my goodness, you won't be able to speak. It's that they want us in our own country to stop speaking right now. They want to control what we say right now, from sports to politics to everything. And we've got to stand up and say, not a chance.
They added this morning, by the way, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, Chris Smith, and Ambassador Brownback to the sanctioned people. I'm joking with Mike Gallagher. He's China Mike. I think he's waiting to get sanctioned, but he hasn't been sanctioned yet. Senator, let me ask you about the Uyghurs. People know about Hong Kong. The tanks haven't rolled in yet. That's a matter of time. But the Uyghurs, you use the term concentration camp. That's accurate. I have a column in the Washington Post this morning. National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien has one in the Post this morning. People do not understand. If they did, do you think the NBA players would care? You know, it's sort of like the early 30s when people didn't understand what was happening in Germany. But we know what is happening in Northwest China. We know what is happening in these concentration camps. Is there any doubt in your mind that we have a genocidal policy at its beginning in focus?
No, there's no doubt in my mind that is absolutely the intent and the policy of the Beijing government. This is a religious minority that is being systematically oppressed. In fact, that doesn't really even do justice. They are the targets, as you say, Hugh, of an extermination type program locked in these concentration camps, made to work, by the way. So the Beijing government, this is really just how evil they are. They profit off of these Uyghurs and their forced labor, even as they're trying to exterminate them. They've got them in these camps. Also, by the way, this is how China uses their surveillance state they have built. Unlike anything we've ever seen in the history of the world, they keep track of every citizen, what you're saying, what you're doing, practically what you're thinking, and then they go and throw you in these camps, and they continue to root out the Uyghurs and concentrate them into these camps and shut them in. It is a massive humanitarian and human rights crisis. It is growing, as you say. And I would say again to the NBA and any other American multinational that does billions of dollars in China a year, you have a responsibility to make sure, number one, you're not complicit in this. Number two, that no products of yours have crossed through a Uyghur concentration camp. And number three, that you're being clear that you're not going to allow Beijing to silence you just by terms of or on condition of access to the Chinese market.
Now, I want to go to their other complicity with the virus. According to a recent expose from Adam Credo, he's a great investigative journalist, quote, China did not report the existence of the coronavirus in late 29, according to a WHO timeline tracking the spread of the virus. Rather, international health officials discovered the virus through information posted to a U.S. website. This is just the latest revelation, Senator, about the complicity of the Xi regime in a failed cover-up that is lethal. Ought we to mince words about this? The world is suffering because of their reckless disregard for facts, truth, and transparency.
There's no doubt about that, Hugh, and there's no reason to pull any punches on it. And this is why that I have called for a commission in the United States led by us and hopefully to involve our allies that will put all of these facts plainly before the world, that will gather them all, and then that will discuss appropriate sanctions and other remedial measures to see that the United States and its allies and the people who have suffered the world over get some compensation from the Beijing regime for what it's done, and also internationally that China is held to account and is made to own up to what it has done. I mean, they need to, internationally, there needs to be no doubt that the Chinese regime is responsible here and that they cannot be trusted on any front, on any subject going forward, from Huawei to the trade deals, to anything else. I mean, it is going to be Ronald Reagan's trust but verify 10 times over now and forever with this regime, and the world needs to know that.
Last question, Senator. We got a lot of people who are puppets of the CCP. We've got Max Baucus, a former senator who never made a nickel in his life and is now consulting to Alibaba or on their advisory board. He was the former ambassador to China. There's a lot of Chinese propaganda. You know, the comment section of my Washington Post is overrun with trolls. Are they running an active disinformation campaign assisted by people on the payroll in the United States by the CCP?
I think that I think they're absolutely running an active disinformation campaign, and you know, I could tell you to step carefully here and not reveal any classified material, but let's just say that I think that what they are doing in the United States, their attempt to influence news, to influence public figures, this has not gone unnoticed by those in the United States who are charged with watching this kind of thing. So it is something that we should all be very concerned about. And back to your point about the 2020 election, we should be concerned about what they want to do to try and disrupt that election.
So 30 seconds. Are you going to ask Lindsey Graham today to get that subpoena out to Adam Silver? I'd watch that. We could do pay-per-view for that, Senator.
I love that idea, Hugh. I just love it.
All right. Thank you for joining me, Senator Josh Hawley from Missouri.
Thank you, Hugh.